Okay, welcome back. This is going to be the first set of observations on the Roman arch, and this is just going to cover some basic Roman arches, also called the semicircular arch. We're going to be looking at some of the features and thinking about why does the arch not collapse, and then how is it constructed. And additionally, we'll be looking at some of the features that do indicate some of the design considerations that were important for the Roman arch, because not all arches will have those same design considerations. Some of them will, some of them won't. So we'll continue taking a look at that before you go on and observe the failures of the arch in the next lesson. Okay, so let's go ahead. All right. Okay, so this is the first Roman arch I wanted to look at, and there are a couple things I was hoping you would observe here. One is that the blocks of the arch are all basically kind of this almost trapezoidal shape. They do have curves here. But you'll notice that, if this bottom line was straight and this top line was straight, the arch would have essentially a similar function. Other thing to notice is that they fit together pretty well. There's not a whole lot of gap in between this thing. So it's rather important for these arch stones to work that they fit together. Now, a very important design consideration with the arch is this center block is not supported by any of the other blocks. So, left free to its own devices, it's not supported by the side supports. It is supported by the blocks right next to it, but without those blocks right next to it, there's nothing directly underneath it that would keep it from falling down. So basically, what's going to happen here is it's these two blocks, so we'll do 1 and 2, that are going to support the center block. But what keeps the center block from falling down? What keeps blocks 1 and 2 from falling down? Well, it's basically the center block. Now, this is a pretty good indication, and because these are larger, these blocks are larger, but there's a smaller number. You can actually see the center stone. This thing is called the keystone. And we'll talk about why it's called the keystone. But basically, the only thing that keeps the blocks to either side of the keystone that I've labeled 1 and 2 from falling down is the keystone itself. But they also mutually hold up the keystone. So it's kind of an interesting idea, and worth thinking about how it could be constructed that way. Now, if we go to these two blocks, 3 and 4. These are supporting blocks 1 and 2, but in turn they are supported by the columns. So these blocks are directly connected to the supports that then touch the ground. So another thing worth considering, a little bit more difficult to see in this particular arch, but up here to the upper right, we've got some more stonework where it seems like this arch was not only providing kind of an opening, or a sort of an impressive looking structure, but it was also bearing some additional weight on top of it. And this is a feature we would see, we have seen throughout Roman arches, and it's something that does come up with later designs of the arch as well. So definitely worth observing that. Now, this one I wanted you to see a couple of new things. One is that you can really increase the number of stones. Now, if we think about the stones that might be able to sit there on their own, just without sort of tipping over, it's definitely these ones on the side and maybe these ones right above it. But anything else, if the stones to either the left or the right of them were missing, then all of this stuff would come crashing down. Now, again, what we can see up here is the keystone. I'll label it K. I believe that would be the keystone, but yeah. And again, just like with the previous arch, we have tight fits. It looks like this might have even been filled in with some kind of mortar or concrete. So definitely want these arches to have tight fits. Another thing to see about this one, over here off to the side, you can kind of see that there was some structure above it. But an important aspect to kind of also give a clue to that is these top stones are flat. So they're curved at the bottom, kind of like the stones in the previous arch were, but they're flat at the top. And the idea here is that if they're going to support weight, they've got to be flat. So that's another thing that this arch was doing. Okay, so still there's this idea of how can this thing be constructed, and we'll hold off on that for a little bit. But it's definitely clear that the reason this arch won't collapse, that any of these top stones won't collapse, is basically they're all being kind of mutually supported by one another. So to think about it this way, if the keystone wanted to, gravity's pulling it downward, it's trying to go down. But in order to do that, it would have to push these, we'll label these, I don't know, just left and right, I guess. These stones would have to be pushed kind of up and outward in order for the keystone to fall. And the weight of the keystone is not sufficient to do that. And sort of same thing, if these two stones, they're being pulled down by gravity. In order to do that, these two stones would have to be pushed upward and outward. So that's not really possible. So it's kind of like gravity's locking all of these things into place. And you're going to have an idea, that term locking into place, that's kind of where this terminology of the keystone comes in. So we'll discuss that a bit more. I think this next picture is actually my favorite picture of the basic arches. Just because there's so many stones, and they're not very big, and it doesn't even look like there is concrete or mortar holding these stones together. Okay, and you can see right there. There's two arches here, of course. Right there, that those two stones look to be the keystones, and again, they're not being held in place by concrete. And it's kind of an important thing to know that if we took the keystones out, then this entire arch would come crumbling down. There's no way that the arch would hold itself in place if the keystones were gone. And that's actually true of any of the stones. If any one of these stones comes loose, then the entire arch will come crashing down. But the thing about it is that the arch, the shapes of the stones are designed in such a way that they can't really fall without pushing the stones to the next to them up and out of the way. And they're not heavy enough to do that. They're not pushing down with enough force to push those stones to the left and right of them out of the way. So that's kind of a unique thing about how these arches will work and how they will maintain their shape. We'll draw the diagrams a little bit better in the next image. Okay, so here is I'll zoom in on that. So here is kind of what the arch, just a diagram of the arch, and you can see this a little bit better. And we're back. So I'm not going to be able to zoom in, but the main thing to see here is that, again, the keystone is in place. It wants to move down. However, in order for gravity to pull the keystone down, it's basically got to force these stones to the left and right of it, either to the side or possibly up and out. Now, one of the things we'll see about the arch is that this up and out direction is actually prevented just by having additional weight on top of it. If there wasn't additional weight on top of it, you could theoretically push down on the keystone hard enough that it would force these blocks to the side up and outward, and then the entire arch would collapse. But by having additional weight on top of it, you can prevent that. In that case, the only way for these arches to push is, to the left or right. And then you're going to have the same issue with these stones to the left or right of those ones. So basically, what this arch is doing, it's kind of taking the gravitational downward push from the keystone and all the other stones and translating it through the shape into this sideways push against the remaining stones. And you'll notice that this does keep the arch standing upright, but only so long as these stones are either prevented from going off to the left and right, or, like I said, possibly, they might get, forced out of the arch, pushed upward and outward like that. So that is the kind of thing I would suggest you look for and see if you can confirm that in the arch diagram. But that's basically what's going on. The shape of the stones is preventing any of the arches from falling downward unless they can push the other stones of the arch out of the arch shape itself. So basically, one of these arch stones need to move in order for the entire arch to collapse, and so long as those stones are held in place, prevented from moving off to the sides, then the arch seems pretty safe. This last one is sort of a diagram of how they would construct an arch. So what you'd do is you'd have, a wooden scaffolding, and if you picked up, this is kind of similar to a roof truss. Rather than having, diagonal pieces, we have a curved piece at the top. But you can see this roof truss, you've got the cross beam, and then this center piece would be the king post. You've got some queen posts off to the sides here. And then what you would see is you would basically lay your stones one at a time, being supported by this wooden scaffolding. So I'll kind of fill in what it would do. You'd have another stone right there, another stone right there, and then right there, and then right there, and then right there. And then when you got to the top, I'll make the keystone a little bit big, you'd put the keystone in place. And once you put the keystone in place, then the arch is effectively locked into place. And you can take away the wooden scaffolding, and the gravity will basically hold the arch in place, like we were talking about. The keystone wants to fall, it pushes this piece to the left, which tightens it up against the other stones in the arch. And as long as there's not very much sliding room in the arch, then the arch will remain secure. So that's why the keystone is called what it is, because once you place it, you lock the arch into place. So that's what the keystone's doing. Okay, so that is going to be about it. There are the image credits. You want to take a look at those. But that is going to be about it for going over the arch. In the next video, we are going to start looking at some different forms of the arch and think about how they would function differently and might have slightly different uses than the Roman arch we've been looking at so far. So, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time.